Hello again, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Now here we're just about to use the 5 horsepower chop saw to saw the end off of the billet, just because that's, you know, some MIG weld and some can we don't need, and some of that end cap that I don't particularly need to include in the blade. And we'll flip it around and get the handle end, chop the handle and some of the end cap off of this end. And we're going to leave most of that 1080 material on that end so I can forge a tang out of it and not lose my heavily patterned material to a tang where you wouldn't see it. And pretty much anytime you use a saw, you're going to have to deburr afterwards. But here I'm also kind of checking the ends after I'm grinding to make sure that I don't see any open welds where there shouldn't be any. And it was looking clean at that point, so that was good. Also, I'm quickly skimming over the flats of the entire billet just to get rid of any high spots, any loose scale, so it sits nice and flat and sticks to the magnetic chuck really well on the surface grinder, because that's where it is going to go next. Surface grinder time. I'm getting the table going. I'm going to adjust the stroke of the table to cover the entire piece, going with the stop there. Moving the table in, I'm lowering the head down. These machines are just an absolute joy to have for a bladesmith that does any kind of pattern welding or complex Damascus work at all. They're just such a labor saver, and they get everything so flat and clean. It's just, it's a thing of beauty. And we just find the surface, pretty much like with any machine tool. You just got to find the surface carefully at first, and then you're going to dial in a feed. You can see there's a high spot, so I'll take the high spot off real quick on the end there. And when I've passed enough of the contact wheel and belt over it, I'll dial myself back out off of the piece. Here I've taken several passes off of both sides. I think 60,000 or 80,000 off of each side, just to make sure I had gotten through the can. Okay, y'all, it's about to get real. The steel looks really, really clean at 120 grit, and I should be through all of the can. I'm gonna go check etch it, and then the next installment will show the pattern reveal, and hopefully it all goes well. Keep your fingers crossed. Okay, we're gonna get a quick glimpse of the pattern going on in this thing. I got kind of a gross check etch on it, and there's a little bit of can left on it, but so far the welds look really good. And now I'm going to put it back in the forge and forge the tang, and then that'll be the last hot step. Firing up the little Dawn Fog style vertical forge. Well, it's made out of 14-inch diameter pipe, but it's got a smaller heat chamber than my ribbon burner forge. I use this one for quick heat ups, just for general forging work. It doesn't have a digital temp controller like the other bigger welding forge. This guy is pretty dang handy for doing a lot of different work. Now here we are using a top tool over on the power hammer. It's just a piece of mild steel, the thickness that I want. I'm just using it as a pallet or a striking tool to step down a shoulder into the end of the bar here. This is I'm forming first the width of the ricasso, the width and thickness of the ricasso of the blade. And it's got to have a wide ricasso just because of the design of the knife. So the blade's about 2 1/4 wide, and the ricasso will be about 1 3/4 wide. So I'm using a 1/2 inch thick. Well, I actually went with a 5/8 thick, now that I remember. Step down tool. And you got to do it in a couple steps and kind of alternate between truing up the flats and knocking more step down, so you don't try to do too much at once and get some funky result. Should be just about done here. Next step is to go over to the guillotine fuller at the Peter Wright anvil and just strike that manually using a 6-pound sledge. And I'm knocking in that double shoulder into the area that I previously stepped down with the top tool to form the shoulders of where the tang will begin. That'll give me something to forge up to with the power hammer. Got to make sure to take it out every now and then and kind of true up the flats there with a hammer. Keep it crisp. And I reckon it's time to go back to the hammer with it. Here we are using the edges of the dies now to work up to that notch that I just stepped in. Flipping it flat to continue controlling the thickness to match the ricasso and the heel of the blade. Just running the hammer slow, not hitting too hard. It'd be very easy to screw up and just stomp a mud hole in this thing by accident right now and have to go back to the drawing board, so to speak. I used to have a 50-pound little giant for doing this kind of stuff, but I sold it last year, and then I upgraded to a 250-pound utility hammer you'll see in some of my other videos, but I haven't set that up quite yet. I have to install it. So right now I'm doing all my power hammer work on the big Baudry here. Okay, so you can see the remainder of the check etch pattern there, but here's where we forged the end out into a fairly straight tang. Aaron makes pretty straight handles on his bowies. I think that's what he's got planned for this, but I guess you could always modify it if you wanted to. So that's a rough forging, and then I'm going to put it in the oven to normalize at an exact temperature and then give it a subcritical anneal or two. But that's all of the forging that'll be done. Later this clip point will be cut off by me after I get the blade softened up. I'll bandsaw it and then surface grind it one more time. So here I have roughly profiled the tang out on the grinder. The blade's all nice and softened so I can bandsaw it easily. And here I have drawn on a clip grind to cut out. The tip is just going to be plain 1080 unless Aaron wants to reprofile it down to there. That'll be up to him. I prefer to conserve the original length, but we'll see how it goes. Anyway, next step is to bandsaw that out. And this is a 20-inch Powermatic Model 81 bandsaw. I put a jack shaft setup in it, and then I also control the 3-phase motor with a VFD to get enough speed reduction for sawing metal with it. I saw pretty much everything with it: wood, metal, synthetics, what have you. It's just a great all-around saw, and as you can see, I do a lot of drawing on it and layout. It's kind of a work table as well. That's really the nature of flat spaces anywhere in a workshop, I'm afraid. So that cuts like butter though with an annealed blade. And now we have a clip cut out of the piece. Now we're just going to, of course, kind of true up the saw cuts off of that clip. And you can see what I mean by when I manually bent it at the end of the forging procedures to make the entire pattern of the blade follow what would be the curved edge of the bowie, as well as that edge bar. gives the pattern better flow than if you just kind of like cut the pattern and out of a rectangular bar and then let the edge bar run out in the belly of the knife. Here we're just squaring up some of the inside corners right there on the ricasso and the heel of the blade. Get it looking nice and crisp. Back to the surface grinder. Now we're going to take it down to the finished thickness, 340 or 50 thou, and nice and clean so that we can get another better quality check etch on it. Looking forward to that. And we're just wrapping it up here with a 120 grit belt. That'll give us a much better etch quality to our check etch than that rough 36 did to begin with. So now it's nice and clean, down to final thickness, and we are ready for the acid bath once more. Making double sure with the micrometer we're at target thickness. A little deburring. Got to make sure all the corners of everything are nice and friendly before I take it in the house and wash it off with soap and get it into the etch and stuff. As an aside, this is my first full week of working on this new Broadbeck Ironworks 2x72 grinder. This thing is amazing. You should get yourself one if you're in the market for a grinder. It's super adaptable. It flips sideways. Everything is quick adjust. Runs very stable and true and smooth and quiet. Well, here we are. I got a check etch on it. It's not a super high def check etch, but I think it'll work for the purposes of demonstrating how the pattern came out. There's just some 1080 left at the tip there from the end cap. Then that mirrored separate edge pattern. Then those black hex cores with twisted bars in a tri-weave pattern. And then that top squiggle bar all the way out to the clip. You can see where the pattern flow squeezes up where I forged the tang out. And this is a large blade. Right now it's about 14 inches long, 350 thou thick or so, and 2¼ inch wide. But the weld just came out perfect. I'm very happy about that. And now it will be going to Aaron Wilburn. He's going to make a fancy handle for it with some twisted Firestorm Damascus I make for the fittings. He's going to put some mammoth on it, I believe, and do a frame handle with maybe some coloring and maybe some Fileworks spacers. I'm not sure. It'll all be up to him, but I'll post the finished results once we see how that came out. But yeah, I'm pumped to have done something kind of worthy of the collab because Aaron's a really awesome smith. Thanks for following me this far, and I'll post up more when I have more to show.